When they released Conan the Barbarian, people lined up outside the theater to watch. The line stretched 3 city blocks and caused a major traffic jam in LA. The cops had to be called up because people were literally fighting each other to go and watch this movie. People waited 8 hours to watch this. When's the last time any movie had this kind of hype? You see, Conan the Barbarian was not another action movie. It was a subversive piece of propaganda designed to inspire men to love beauty, to fight evil, and embrace their will to power. The movie even shows the greatest flaw of civilization. As a civilization grows, it becomes a petri dish for cultic activity. It shows how secret cults of elites can use psychological operations to sow the seeds of sin and sexual confusion. Now, let's dive into the story. Now, don't worry about spoilers. You're an adult, not a child. We start off in the Hyborian age, set 10,000 years before the year of our Lord.
Between the time when the oceans drank Atlantis and the rise of the sons of Arius, there was an age undreamed of. And unto this, Conan, destined to bear the jeweled crown of Aquilonia upon a troubled brow. It is I, his chronicler, who alone can tell thee of his saga. Let me tell you of the days of high adventure.
In this Hyborian age, in the cold, vast steppe of Chimeria, lived Conan, the son of a blacksmith. He and his mother helped his father forge a sword of surpassing power and beauty. It is around this time that his father spoke to him of the riddle of steel.
The secret of steel has always carried with it a mystery. You must learn its riddle, Conan. You must learn its discipline. For no one in this world can you trust. Not men, not women, not beasts. This you can trust.
If the riddle of steel sounds confusing to you, have no fear. I will reveal the meaning and the answer to the riddle of steel later in this video. But first, we must, of course, tell the story of Conan. Just as Conan's father finishes work on his greatest sword, there is trouble. Evil is coming to Cimmeria. The sigil of the serpent darkens the skies as horsemen darken the horizon. The townsfolk fight, the townsfolk flee, but there is no hope for them. The Bronze Age raiders of the cult of the serpent are armored, on horseback, and have no place in their heart for mercy. Bones are crushed and blood reddens the soil. The yellow flames dance in glee as houses are burned. Conan's father fights the raiders, but he is but one man. His flesh is torn and his bones are shattered by the dogs of war. But who let loose the dogs of war? Conan and his mother look upon his face. He is the end and the death. They are looking upon the master of serpents, Lord Thulsa Doom. Thulsa Doom shows no hate, no anger, no emotion at all, as he separates a child from his mother. And so Conan is reborn into servitude, into slavery. From a freeman of the north to a slave of the southlands, he is yoked to the wheel of pain. It is here that Conan grows up, first to a teenager and then to a full-grown man. It is only now that we are introduced to the star of the movie, the one and only 7 times winner of Mr. Olympia, the father of bodybuilding, the Austrian oak, the machine, the Governator. Give it up for Arnold Schwarzenegger. As I tell this tale of Conan the Barbarian, the slave who became king of Aquilonia by his own hand, I shall also tell you of the saga of Arnold Schwarzenegger, the boy who was born to post-war Europe after the Allies had turned Germany into an ashtray, after the Soviets had turned the soil red with civilian blood. Arnold's mother had to scavenge for food for weeks to feed her 2 sons. She would be away for 3 days without shelter to make sure her children survived. When we hear of a fantastical story like Conan the Barbarian, we think that's a cool story, but it would never really happen in real life. But let's look at Arnold. He was born into poverty in a war-torn land. He joined the Austrian army as a young man and fell in love with a little-known sport which had no money behind it called bodybuilding. Despite this, he was sponsored to go to America, a new land where he didn't even speak the language. He took that sport, bodybuilding, and made it a national sensation. He won the highest title of Mr. Olympia, not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 7 times. He is the reason why there is a gym within walking distance of your home. He started the culture shift that made this all possible. He kicked off a $1 billion cultural movement in his 20s, and that is what I mean when I say man of power. Once he got tired of winning Mr. Olympia, the highest honor in bodybuilding, he went into acting despite the fact that his English was very broken. A man who couldn't even speak English that well became the highest paid lead actor in all the world. He was in the, of course, irreplaceable movies The Terminator, Total Recall, Conan the Barbarian, that started it all. There's also Predator and a couple others which are just iconic. And when he got tired of being the highest paid actor on earth, he decided to run for governor of California. He won not 1 term, but 2. And the second term, he won by a landslide. On top of this, he married into the Kennedy family, which is the closest thing you can find to modern royalty. So he married a princess. This was a woman who was born into all the money and political connections that you could possibly hope for. To recap, he went from a war-torn, destitute nation to becoming the governor of one of the greatest states in the United States. And then he also married a real-life princess. And as he did all this, he also had the time to build a real estate empire in California. He became a millionaire before he started his movies. So he didn't even need the movies for money. In fact, he started a construction company with the legendary Franco Colombo. And he did this before Conan the Barbarian was a thing. So when the producer, Dino De Laurentiis, tried to screw Arnold in the deal, Arnold didn't care. He had leverage. He had money. The producers needed him. And it wasn't just business and money. He was also a producer of culture. He was a co-producer of bodybuilding competitions in which I have participated and competed in. Let me explain. I competed at the Arnold Classic, hosted at the massive convention center at Columbus, Ohio. I didn't compete at bodybuilding, I competed at ballroom dance. You see, the bodybuilding competition that Arnold helped found expanded to include other sports and other events, everything from fencing to MMA to HEMA, which is historical European martial arts, if I'm not mistaken. And all this was made possible because of one man and his mission. Of course, I knew none of this when I met Arnold at Columbus. All I knew was he played the Terminator. But this one man, not without his flaws by the way, especially his political stuff, shows us how much can be done in a lifetime. Most men die having never lived. Some men live 1,000 lifetimes before they die. What type of man are you? What type of man do you want to be? That is the real topic of this video. Now we shall explore this movie together, not as a fantasy, but as a model for reality when a man decides to exercise his will to power. To do this, we must return to the Hyborian age. Conan has grown strong upon the wheel of pain. In fact, when they were filming this sequence, they had to have 3 men pushing against Arnold so that it would look like he's actually putting in some effort. So Arnold was able to push aside 3 grown men without even breaking in a sweat. That's the kind of strength that he had. Now, seeing this older, stronger Conan, the slave master realizes that he has a different future for him. So Conan is carted away, not towards freedom, but towards the fighting pits. Here, Conan is tossed into the fight with horrific men, savages with their teeth filed to fangs. Here Conan learns to fight, relying on instinct and strength to win rather than skill. After spilling rivers of blood, Conan cares not about life and death. He just cares about the mad baying of the crowds. And now, does this not have a basis in history? When most people think about Rome, they think of the Colosseum. They think of the architectural marvel that it is. The fact that it rose above the city skyline, that it had a retractable sunroof, and that it could be flooded with water from the river Tiber to have shipborne naval combat. Crazy. Most people think that the Colosseum is a symbol of Rome's greatness, but I see it differently. I see it as a sign of Rome's decline. People think that Rome was great because they could bring gladiators and slaves all the way from Ethiopia in the south and from the Germanic tribes in the north. But the thing is, the early Romans had no use for a Colosseum and would have rightly seen it as a waste of money. They would have dismissed watching the games as a waste of time. They would have been disgusted by the fat city dwellers who were jeering and drinking while the fighters fought for their entertainment. The noble Greeks and Romans that Plutarch talked about would have hid their faces in shame if they saw what Rome had become. Indeed, the Roman Colosseum was a psychological operation. The edict was called bread and games. The masses would not revolt so long as their bellies were filled with grain and their minds were filled with stimulation. Can you tell me, is this not like the world that we are living in right now? Our taxes go up every year. It is becoming more and more impossible to own a house or to raise a family. And saving money is a joke because inflation will just burn through your savings, and yet we sit on our ass. We are that frog that burns alive when the temperature rises. The founding fathers of this great nation would have burned Washington to the ground 10 times already if they were alive today. But returning to Conan, we see that the boy is now a killer. He has trained with the sword masters of the East. He is no longer relying on instinct and strength. He is now one of the greatest swordsmen in all Hyboria. But he is still a slave. One night, something interesting happens. His master, his owner, comes to him and says, "You are free." Conan doesn't understand what this means. The master has to actually break the chains and free him and push him out to give him his freedom. Now, it's curious. Why would the slave master give Conan his freedom? We are never told why. Before his freedom, we get two scenes. First, we see that Conan was practicing with his blade at night when there are no crowds to jeer him on, and we see the master looking at him with a smile on his face. And then the second scene is we see this legendary, most memorable, iconic scene where they ask him, "Conan, what is best in life?" And he replies,
"Crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and to hear the lamentation of their women."
That is good. That is good.
And here too the slave master is smiling, but I think it is a fake smile. When Conan says the best thing in life is to crush his enemies, he's lying, because he's never done that before. He has never fought his enemies. His enemy is Thulsa, not the random pit fighters he's forced to fight. So just saying these lines which are written by somebody else, the slaver sees that Conan is living beneath his potential, and it decides that it is more important to set this man free than to use him for his enrichment. The fact that we don't get an answer from the movie as to why Conan is freed is such a nice touch, because it gives us the chance to reflect on the motivations of the characters on screen. But whatever the reason might be, Conan is now free. But Conan learns that freedom isn't free. The wolves are on him now, snapping at his heels. But Conan is fast. He escapes into a pit of darkness. But this is no ordinary cave. The story of how this scene was shot is so funny. So if it looks like Arnold was running for his life, that's because he was. The wolves were let loose too early, and Arnold was actually sprinting as hard as he could to get away. So they had sewn raw meat into the costume, so the wolves were actually trying to get to the raw meat. In real life, the wolves actually caught him and dragged him off the rocks and busted his face open, so he had to get stitches.
And then I remember the thing where Arnold did fall down the rocks, and he looks and he's bleeding, and he says, "I'm bleeding." And I said, "Yeah, look, it looks great. Don't touch it, And he says, he goes, but I'm bleeding, And then I said, "The pain is only momentary, but the film is eternal."
Pain is temporary, but movies are forever. He says, this movie will be forever.
Unknown to Conan, he didn't find himself in an ordinary cave. It was a tomb, the tomb of a long dead and long lost Atlantean king. This king was long dead, but hey, his sword was still good as new. Atlantean steel is legendary in the world of Hyboria. It never rusts and always keeps its edge. Conan, of course, puts the steel to good use. The wolves that came to kill him now protect him from the cold. It is often that the challenge we face today is the solution to the challenge we face tomorrow, and so it is with Conan. As Conan continues his journey, he comes across a stone hut, and, of course, a woman.
Do you not wish to warm yourself by my fire?
Naturally, Conan takes the invitation. He wants to learn more about his destiny, and this woman seems to know a little bit more than she should. So Conan starts to get the information by any means necessary. The woman gives him the location of the snake cult, Numeria, and that is what Conan came for. But to Conan's horror, as moonlight hits her, she turns into a demon and tries to kill him. Of course, Conan being Conan, throws her bitch ass into the fire and goes back to sleep and wakes up the next day as though nothing happened. Next day, he wakes up and he sees a guy chained to the side of the hut, and he makes his first friend.
I am Sumatai.
And they have the first proper conversation in the entire movie.
What gods do you pray to?
I pray to the four winds. And you?
To Crum, but I seldom pray to him. He doesn't listen.
What good is he then? Yeah, it's just as I've always said.
He's strong. If I die, I have to go before him. And he will ask me, what is the riddle of steel? If I don't know it, he will cast me out of Valhalla and laugh at me. That's Crum. Strong on his mountain.
Here we are reminded of the riddle of steel. We are taught that Conan's god is Crom, and Conan does not insist, of course, that Crom is the only god, because he doesn't believe that. In this world, Crom is one of many gods. And this is how the Romans saw things, and most pagans saw things. When Romans conquered a new city, they prayed to the gods of that new city, promising that they would venerate these gods more than the people of that city ever did. This was the way the pre-Christian world thought about religion, and it's cool to see a glimpse of that historically accurate paradigm in the movie. Now, returning to the Hyborian age, Conan continues to search for the snake cult, but now with a friend by his side. They reach Zamora, and the following scenes are so cool, and the set seems fantastic but yet grounded in reality. John Milius, the director, was responsible for bringing these scenes to life. All the leather in this movie was aged by having cars drag it through the dirt, and there's no saddles in the movie because there was no saddles in the Hyborian age. This movie was special because the director was special. John Milius wasn't another left-leaning twink director that we find in Hollywood nowadays. He didn't even want to be a director. His goal was to be a wartime general in the US Marine Corps. Unfortunately for him, and fortunately for the enemies of the United States, he was disqualified from service because he had a breathing condition. He took up directing because he felt like he was a general. You had an army of cameramen, you had the sound and light teams, you had the actors and the stuntmen, and to bring everything together was to him like being a general. He was obsessed with the will to power. He admired this above all. He studied the arms and armors of the Greek and Romans. He studied the guns and bayonets of the first two world wars. He was able to bring a lifetime of research to this project. And that is why he was able to build a civilization which wasn't a real civilization but felt like one. So Conan and Subotai decide to infiltrate the snake cult tower to learn more. And that is where we meet Valeria.
I saw all that jazz, and I saw her dance, the erotica dance. And I said, that is a Valkyrie. If ever there's been a Valkyrie on Earth, it is that woman. That's a Valkyrie. And we must find who that woman is.
Sandahl Bergman was not a professional actor. She was a professional dancer. And so we have to observe this, that John Milius had hired 3 non-professional actors in the 3 main roles. Jerry Lopez was a professional surfer, and Arnold, of course, was a professional bodybuilder. You can bet that the producers were pressuring him to hire actors who had face recognition and some prior experience, but the director said no. In today's currency, this was a $70 million movie. Having the balls to risk $70 million because you believed in your vision takes dedication. Now we have our team. We have Conan, the tank, we have Subotai for range warfare, and we have Valeria for stealth. And the snake cult has no idea what's coming. So they separate, Valeria investigating the cult herself, and Conan and Subotai investigating the labyrinth beneath. In the labyrinth, they find great riches, and the greatest of the riches is a jewel guarded by a giant snake. Conan tries to get the jewel without waking the snake up, but of course, Conan's big ass is not meant for stealth, and he of course wakes the snake up. I was expecting some kind of big climactic battle like Harry Potter versus the Basilisk, but what happens is actually way more unexpected, and in my opinion, awesome. So when the snake attacks Conan, he gets one-shotted. So Conan puts a sword through its skull the second the snake wakes up. In the next 3 seconds, Subotai launches 3 arrows into its face. The snake is already fucked, and then Conan takes a sword out of the snake's skull and lops his head off. So the snake had no chance. And the cool thing is, during the shooting of the scene, John Milius is actually shooting real arrows above Arnold's head. And the snake, they didn't have CG back then, so there was an actual big-ass robot snake that they had to build. And in that scene where the snake is bashing Arnold against the wall and looks like Arnold is in pain, Arnold's not acting. That snake is actually whacking him against the wall hard and leaves Arnold bruised for days. And that one scene where Arnold strikes the snake's head off and there's a blood spurt. So the way they did that is they attached this huge bag of blood to the snake's neck in that exact position. And the snake's moving and Arnold has to hit it at the exact precise place. Otherwise, he's going to damage the robot. And so Arnold was actually practicing with the sword for months prior to the shoot. Hours and hours every day. So he actually became a very good swordsman. So when the snake was moving and he had to hit it with a precision blow, he could actually land a blow on target. And the swords themselves were awesome. Only 4 of these swords were ever made, and they were real broadswords, each of them costing $30,000 in today's money to make. And Arnold being able to wield it with so much precision and ease is a testament to his strength, but also his actual real-world training.
It was like really extensive kind of a training camp, an ongoing training camp, and including the weight training and all those things, because he wanted to make sure that the body doesn't just look very muscular, but that it also looks as smooth and as fluent with its performance with the sword moves and all this. And all of those physical activities had to become second nature.
Once they capture that jewel and they kill the snake, the team escapes the serpent tower and get away. And now we come to a new scene and a new concept, Conan the party animal.
Success can test one's mettle as surely as the strongest adversary.
Conan is then captured and taken to King Osric. Instead of punishing them for the theft of the jewels, he praises them for standing up to the snake cult. He explains how he hates the snakes, and he hates Thulsa Doom, its leader. And now, not only has the cult terrorized his people, but his very own daughter has run off to join the snake cult. So the king makes Conan an offer. Bring his daughter back and he would give him all the riches in the world. I really like this scene because it teaches something that we hear so often that we kind of almost dismiss. The fact that money doesn't matter so much. You will grow old and you will lose your parents and you will die, and money doesn't reverse that. I will grow old, I will lose my parents, and I will die, and money will not reverse that. Don't buy into Brian Johnson's bullshit. It's a scam. The technology for immortality might come, but it will be gatekept. You and I are not going to get access to it, and you and I will die, just as our ancestors died, and just as our offspring will die. And when you die, you will not take a single penny up there with you. So that brings us to Conan, who in the books and the movies spends money freely without a care in the world because he knows 2 things. First, you don't need a lot of money to survive. And the second, if you have the skills, you can make the money back. There's also a historical parallel here. Milius has a bone to pick with the hippie free love cults of the 60s. The old king whose daughter runs away to join a snake cult is not too different from a conservative father whose daughter runs away to get drugged and get passed around like a bong in some Volkswagen camper. And now we return to the Hyborian age, where Conan and Valeria have found something more valuable than gold and rubies. Valeria begs Conan, forget about this Thulsa Doom thing. They have the money, they can just go away, and they can live a beautiful life. But Conan doesn't say anything. The cold fire in his heart cannot be quenched by gold, only blood, the blood of serpents. So he leaves, leaving the love of his life and his best friend behind, right into the serpent's lair to find and destroy Thulsa Doom. At first, it's not easy to find the snakes. He travels far and wide, eventually coming to an ancient ruin, a ruin so ancient that none remember the names of the kings and warriors who fought there. I want you to think through this carefully. Conan himself is set in pre-ancient history, and he is gazing upon ruins that to him are ancient. And this has precedent in our real history. When Caesar came to Egypt and met Cleopatra, they saw the pyramids and considered the pyramids to be long-lost civilizations, ancient history. I want you to ponder this. They are men who were kings in their time, far more greater in power than Bezos or Musk, far wealthier than Zuckerberg or Hormozy, but their names are so forgotten that they can never be remembered again. Their kingdoms turned to ash, not just figuratively, but literally. Entire civilizations, their religions, their hopes and dreams lost so thoroughly that they cannot be brought back, and not just cannot be brought back, not even a trace, a shred of them survives to this day. I mean, even think of something great like the Roman Empire. If I told Julius Caesar that Latin, the language of the Roman Empire, would be dead within a couple centuries, he would not believe it. But that is the case. there's only a few old scholars today who can speak Latin. It would be as though I told you that English would be displaced by some other language. You wouldn't believe it. But that is exactly what happened in history. So throughout the Hyborian age, there is this sense of transience, a sense of a sunset coming to their civilization. Conan is a mighty, powerful warrior in the prime of his life, able to defeat goblins and monsters and sorcerers. But he will die. And King Osric will die. Valeria will die, just as you and I will die. That being said, there are some characters in this story that will not die so easily. Thulsa Doom does not die. He uses sorcery to gain immortality. This is the great enemy Conan must face without his friends by his side. Thulsa Doom has been living for 1,000 years, mastering the arts of sorcery and war. He must face him alone. Eventually, he finds the cultists who lead him to the Mountain of Power. Here he sees the followers of Doom, seemingly peace-loving people who have no interest in killing or raiding. It seems like a hippie paradise. Here he meets some strange characters, let's just say. He meets this priest. Let me just play this clip.
You're so big and so well grown.
Good.
Here you see that Conan isn't a brute. He's smart. He's able to use the psychological terrain to his advantage. But why do we even have this scene in the movie? I think it's because John Milius hates hippies, and he probably hates gays. The 60s free love left-leaning movement was disgusting to Milius, and he wanted to poke fun at how they would use the messaging of peace and tolerance to lure young men and women into sexual exploitation. Some say that that is still what's going on in Hollywood to this day. And Milius was just trying to expose this. Now Conan tries to use the guise of a priest to infiltrate the cult. But as we know from the snake scene, Conan is not exactly the master of stealth, and it just gets discovered in like 3 seconds. Conan gets beaten up, he's not invincible, he's a great warrior, but as this scene shows, he can be beaten and he can be brought to his knees. Here we are reintroduced to Thulsa Doom.
You killed my father, you killed my people!
Steel isn't strong, boy. Flesh is stronger. Look around you. There, on the rocks. That beautiful girl.
Come to me, my child.
That is strength, boy. That is power. The strength and power of flesh.
I want to give you some insight as to what you just saw. Thulsa Doom gives a different answer to the riddle of steel. Conan's father, a blacksmith, says that steel is stronger because steel can never betray you. But Thulsa Doom says that flesh is stronger because it is flesh that wields the steel. But what are we really talking about here? Thulsa Doom, in the years after the attack on Conan's village, seems to have gone from being a warrior to a priest. He's exchanged his armor for ceremonial robes. Instead of using steel as a weapon, he uses an army of flesh. These men and women have given up their jobs, given up their relationships and their identity to join the collective. This is why I hate cults. Cults are for the weak-minded people. This movie, Conan the Barbarian, begins with a quote from Nietzsche, which says, "What does not kill us makes us stronger." But here we are reintroduced to a different concept of Nietzsche, which is the genealogy of morals. There are two types of morality according to Nietzsche, the master morality and the slave morality. Master morality is for the men who are born to be masters. They don't care about good and evil, they care about success or failure. For the masters, the ability to exercise one's will to power is the highest goal. And the masters care about expansion, about growth and for victory and for leaving a legacy. For the slaves, it's the opposite. They care about humility, timidity, forgiveness, and peace. Now, then where does the priest come into this? For Nietzsche, the priest is a traitor. The priest is actually one of master morality, but he uses his master aura not to fight in honest battle with other masters, but instead to influence the masses of peasants to becoming a weapon of flesh. The priest, as Nietzsche defines it, is not just a religious figure. Scientists, doctors, civil rights activists, influencers on the internet could all be priests. Any man who wants his followers to not think for themselves is a priest, according to the genealogy of morals. Conan, of course, is the opposite of a priest. He's a simple man. He has a mission, and he takes the actions required to fulfill that mission. It's not that Conan doesn't have influence over others. He does. But it's not through words or magic, it is through action. It is through the quality of his actions that he inspires loyalty. Nietzsche, Robert E. Howard, the writer of the Conan books, and John Milius, the director of the movie, believed in cycles of civilization. Conans create the good times. Good time creates the Thulsa Dooms. Thulsa Dooms create the bad times, and bad times create Conans. Thulsa Doom is played by the great James Earl Jones, a Shakespearean actor. You can hear the power in his voice. James Earl Jones is the voice behind Darth Vader. You can sense the amount of weight that he puts behind the words that he speaks. But it wasn't always the case. When he was younger, James had a crippling stutter. He could barely speak. He was considered mute until age 14. But in his teens, he developed a passion for literature. He wanted to read aloud, and his teachers encouraged him. They told him, if you love words, you must learn to speak them. And in my education, there were teachers who told me that I should study biology. I was good at it. They told me to write essays. They told me to learn public speaking. And here we are. So the message I want to give to you is, when you interact with a child, somebody young, give them encouragement. You just have no idea that you might change their life forever.
I really thought that it would be neat to make him look like a race that had disappeared. To have this great James Earl Jones face, and then have these stark blue eyes, and straight hair, so that he would really look like he was part of a migration of a race that had died out. Some superior kind of early Atlantean type of character. And in that way, he sort of played like he is the last of his race, and that he knows more than them and everything, but his race is weakening and this other race is coming in.
Coming back to Hyboria, Conan is crucified upon the tree of woe. Why this scene? John Milius created this scene to contrast the crucifixion of the Lord Jesus Christ versus Conan the Barbarian. The contrast he's making is that Christ did not use his power to resist his crucifixion, but Conan, till the end, is defiant. This is the great tug of war between Christianity and paganism. Now, this is a complex topic. If you're interested in delving deeper, I made a video called The Dark Future of Religion. If you like this video, that video is right up your alley. In fact, I would say any man of power must watch that video. Why does Conan laugh? Conan laughs because he can see his friend Subutai coming to save him, but he also knows that it is too late. He will be dead before Subutai comes to him. And he is laughing at his death. He's laughing at how close he was to being saved, but that it wasn't to be. And then Conan dies. Conan is dead, and his friends take his dead body to a sorcerer to make blood sacrifice to bring him back. So it is the case that Conan is fighting against sorcery, but it is also the case that sorcery is what brings Conan back from the dead to make his conquest. Now Conan has another chance to leave. He can leave Thulsa Doom and go and live a life of riches, of romance and friendship. Or he can risk defeat, torture and death. But of course, we know what decision he will make. If he chose to escape, to leave, then we wouldn't have a movie, we wouldn't have a plot, we wouldn't have a story. And there's a lesson here. In life, if we choose to retreat into safety, and we can always do so, we just wouldn't have a story. And life is measured in the stories that we have to tell. Nobody in their old age would think, man, I'm glad I didn't do the thing, that I don't have stories to tell my grandkids. But coming back to Conan, this time the man has a plan and he has a team. This time they infiltrate the mountain from a secret cave in the rear. You can see what really goes on in the cult. It's not about peace and tolerance after all. The cult has an appetite for human flesh. The cult prepares cauldrons of vile slop from this human flesh. The slop is what gives the inner circle their immortality. They have their immortality, but at the cost of their humanity. The inner circle has no fear of death, so they spend their entire life indulging in sin. And this is where Conan and his team see an opportunity. They're able to capture the princess and fight their way to freedom, but on their way to get out of there, Thulsa Doom has a last laugh. Conan saved a random woman who he didn't really care for, but in the process lost the love of his life. And now Conan and Subutai make ready for war. As expected, the Serpent clan attacks, but thanks to their preparation, they are able to deal a decisive blow, a terrible blow against the Snake cult. Conan is able to kill Thulsa's two main henchmen, the same men who burnt down his village 20 years ago. But Thulsa Doom himself leaves without facing Conan. He doesn't care, but Conan cares. So Conan goes back to the mountain and infiltrates the mountain again, this time with the aim of not leaving until Doom is dead.
You have come to me, my son. For who now is your father if it is not me? Who gave you the will to live? I am the wellspring from which you flow. When I am gone, you will have never been. What will your world be without me, my son?
This is an interesting scene because Thulsa Doom is objectively correct. His evil is what shaped Conan, and without that evil, Conan may be just another village blacksmith, not a renowned fighter and adventurer. But of course, it is Conan the barbarian, not Conan the intellectual. So Thulsa's venomous words have no effect, and Conan beheads Thulsa Doom. And so we come to the end of the movie, but not to the end of Conan the Barbarian. You see, while the movie is called Conan the Barbarian, the movie does not have Conan the Barbarian. Conan is not a barbarian. The movie plays a trick on you, and that was what I'm going to show you in the next few minutes. The Conan you see on screen isn't the real Conan. You see, the movie Conan is based on the book Conan by Robert E. Howard, and the Conan of the books is a different man altogether. This is what I mean when I say Conan the movies is not a barbarian. In the movie, Conan spent most of his childhood in captivity as a slave. In fact, 20 years he's a slave, and he just comes out of slavery for the movie that we see. Barbarism implies a life of freedom and adventure, but Conan has lived a life of servitude and regimented training. Now, let's look at the differences in the origin stories. In the book, there is no tragic story. Robert E. Howard does not make Conan a victim. He emerges fully formed, a man of the wild. He is not trained in swordplay. He learns to fight by instinct. Just as a panther is not taught to pounce, he just knows. And Conan isn't taught to wield a blade in the same way. To Robert E. Howard, Conan was an apex predator, a man among men, not through education or training, but by birth. Just as a tiger is a tiger, not by education, but by birth. John Milius, who hadn't read the Conan book, decided to make his own Conan and his own movie, which wasn't really authentic to the books. The reason why he gave Conan this tragic backstory is because it allows the viewers to empathize with Conan and root for him. Even though Conan was skilled with a blade, it wasn't through instinct, it was through training. Why this change? To some extent, it is because they wanted to soften Conan for the general audience. The idea of a man who is born strong, powerful, and charismatic makes people feel uncomfortable. Normal people want to believe that everybody is born equal and that only effort separates winners from losers, not any innate characteristics. Normal people explain inequalities in society on the basis of pre-existing social norms or biases like racism. But the harsh truth that the books wants you to know is that some men and women are born with innate traits that give them superiority over others. Conan is written to be larger than life. He isn't just good at fighting, he also has great speaking skills. In the movie, Conan barely speaks, but that's because Arnold's English wasn't that good. In the movie, Conan doesn't make jokes, he doesn't give speeches, he's heartbroken, vengeful, and brooding. He plays the archetype of a vengeful warrior, not a barbarian with a zest for life. On the opposite side, the book Conan goes on adventures, not because he needs revenge, but because he thought it would be fun. The book Conan is actually great with his words. He speaks multiple languages, can be funny, can be sarcastic, can be diplomatic, or even inspiring. And here we come to a similarity. Conan inspires. In-universe, he inspires loyalty, not through magic, like Thulsa Doom, but through his actions. His friends would rather die than abandon him, and Conan himself would rather die than abandon his friends. Conan is the alpha of his wolf pack. Everybody on the outside is fair game, but if you are on the inside, Conan would do anything to keep you safe. Loyalty is the basis of morality for Conan, and this similarity makes me think that Conan of the books and the Conan from the movies are one and the same, just with different childhoods. Earlier I said that Conan inspires people in his universe, but he also inspires us outside, in our real universe. Look upon the works of Frank Frazetta, these glorious, dark and mythical, captivating pieces. These art pieces themselves continue to inspire. Frank Frazetta's granddaughter has taken upon herself to protect and push Frazetta's work on social media. The art is so powerful that it became a part of the Frazetta family legacy. The art pieces are a part of why Arnold wanted to play the role in the first place. The power, ferocity, and the sheer epicness of the Conan art appealed to Arnold. And because of the art, the directors chose Arnold for the role, because only Arnold had the proportions, the size, and the look for Conan. In other words, a book series written in the 1950s inspired a comic series in the 1960s, and then inspired a movie in the 1980s, and inspired this video in 2025. 75 years later, this is the power of art. And it is not just the visuals either. The score, composed by Basil Polidorus, is legendary. It took him a year of work to compose 60 minutes of the music that is used in this movie. And that is what it takes. It is not just hard work, but true inspiration. I'll give you an example. On the night before Basil Polidorus composed the funeral pyre score, he had a terrible nightmare. He dreamt that his wife and daughter were killed by a shadow. And he brought this sadness the next day morning when he composed the score. So now that sadness lives forever as a part of this movie. Now, together, let us solve the riddle of steel. If you like this movie, we go deeper into the history and philosophy to finally answer the riddle of steel. I have uploaded it as a separate video. Check that link out in the description. Like I promised, here's a reminder to sign up for the free bloodwork consultation. If you're trying to outdo your competition at work, in business, or in college, or in dating, I can give you some very powerful tools indeed. Click the link to bloodworkconsulting.com in the description and fill out the form. We can help you change your life forever.